Welcome to the online session conducted by SAP for engineering students. The topic for today's session is Design of Tall Vessels of Chemical Engineering Design 1. The session is conducted for 6th semester students of chemical engineering. The session will be handled by Mr. Amal GS, Assistant Professor ad hoc, Department of Chemical Engineering, TKM College of Engineering, Kollam. He did his BTech in Chemical Engineering from NIT Calicut and MTech from NIT Jalandhar. He worked as assistant professor on contract ad hoc at NIT Calicut for 1 year. His area of interest include environmental engineering, wastewater treatment, process modeling and simulation, process control, numerical method in chemical engineering. On behalf of ASAP, sir, I welcome you to the session. To the participants, the total duration of the session is 1 hour. The session comprises of 2 halves each, 20 minutes lecturing and 10 minutes for Q&A. The students can ask their questions in the Q&A box. Sir, once again, welcome to the session. Sir, please proceed with the session.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the introduction. So, I wish good afternoon to all, and I welcome to you all to the ASAP online class on Chemical Engineering Design 1, organized by ASAP. Myself, Amal GS, I'm an assistant professor on contract in the Department of Chemical Engineering, TKM College of Engineering, Kollam. First of all, I'd like to thank the ASAP coordinators as well as all the support staff for the technical help, and our HOD Professor Femina Madam, and all my colleagues at TKM for their support. Okay, so I'll be muting my video because there may be some connection issues. So kindly forgive me. So today's session is on design of tall vessels. So since the extent of syllabus completion is varied in different colleges across Kerala, I'll be giving a general introduction to the subject and then proceeding on to the design of tall vessels. So about the course Chemical Engineering Design 1, as it is a core course in chemical engineering, it is a very important course which merges all the principles we have studied from heat transfer as well as mass transfer and other core subjects. And most of the designing is now being done in simulation softwares, but all the analytical techniques are still required. And it is a purely analytical course, and a lot of practice is required in order to write examinations. So there are two modules, module 1 and module 2. Module 1 deals with general chemical engineering drawing and introduction to pressure vessel design. And then in module 2, you have design of storage tanks and process design and thermal design of heat exchangers as well as condensers. Then the reference textbooks which are useful, it is there in the syllabus itself, B.C. Bhattacharya, Introduction to Chemical Equipment Design, and Brown and Young. The second one is actually a reference textbook. It is a bit higher order textbook. Then for process design, you have D.Q. Kern and Badger, Banjero, McCabe, Smith, etc. Then these are some general references, Joshi and Mahajan. So you can find both mechanical as well as process design in these textbooks, S.P. Dwande, Olson and Richardson, ISA course, etc. Then next thing, there are some useful NPTEL resources. The first one is Equipment Design Mechanical Aspects by Professor Shabina. That is actually an NPTEL certificate course. You can attend it from this July. And the registration is starting from May 20th. Then the second one, it is a series of 6 PDF modules, and all the contents in Chemical Engineering Design 1 as well as Design 2 is covered in the second one. Both these resources are available online. You can make use of them. Then the pattern of examination. So you'll be having generally 3 questions. So 2 questions of which will be from mechanical design, which consists of these topics, and 1 question from the process or thermal design, which will be from these areas. You will have to answer any 2 of the 3 questions, and there may or may not be subdivisions. And chemical engineering drawing is common in both, so it can be asked in either. So this is the general overview. And these things are permitted in the exam hall. So you can carry Paris Chemical Engineering, original of Paris Chemical Engineering Handbook, 7th, 8th, or 9th edition. Then steam table, then attested copies or originals of the IS codes 2825, 803. These two are the most important ones. The other ones are just for reference. Then general introduction to the course. So chemical engineering design is actually a very vast topic. The course itself is very vast. It includes, the basic, it starts from the identification of need of a design till the end, the implementation stage. So the entire procedure is covered under chemical engineering design. So it includes the search for raw materials, the new technologies. Then we have to set up a pilot plan, then find the location, then we have to scale up the process. Then finally, after scaling it, we have to commission a plan. Then again, it's not over. You have to modify. There will be some modifications required. Then upgradation. From the, you can increase the capacity, etc. So all those topics is included in chemical engineering design. But for our course, we'll be focusing on two aspects. First one is the equipment design part. Second one is the engineering drawing part. So in equipment design, we have two sections. One is the mechanical design and the another section is called the process design. In mechanical design, you will be studying certain mechanical aspects of the process equipments which we use. In process design, we'll study the thermal design where we do comprehensive heat and mass balances, etc. So engineering drawing, so to begin any design or to begin any chemical plant, you need to have a drawing with you or you have to prepare a drawing. So it is the beginning stage of process design. You have to have at least a rough sketch or a block diagram of the design which you are going to make. So that is the very basic one, the block diagram. It is a simple input output diagram using blocks. Then the second one is the process flow diagram. So there, instead of blocks, the blocks will be replaced by equipment which are used and the process connections between those equipment. And finally, the most comprehensive one is the P&ID, piping and instrumentation diagram, where all the equipment are shown, then all the related connections, then control loops. By control loops, there may be some control for the input. The output should be controlled, or the concentration, purity, temperature, etc. Such things must be controlled. It is being dealt with in P&ID. Then over to equipment design, I mentioned there are two streams. One is the mechanical aspects and other one is the process or thermal design aspect. Mechanical, we are interested in pressure vessel design, and that is strictly based on IS 2825. All the criteria are detailed in that. Then inside that, we have shell design, stress calculation, tall vessel design, heads, flanges, openings, supports, etc. So these are all there in the IS code 2825. And for storage vessels, we have IS code 803. So all the how to design a storage vessel, different types, etc. dealt. Then in process or thermal design, we have heat exchangers, condensers in this semester, and all these others, extractors, cooling vessel, etc. we have in the next semester. Then moving on to a pressure vessel. What do you mean by a pressure vessel? So IS 2825, it is specifically for an unfired pressure vessel. So we are not considering any reaction or any change happening inside, just an unfired pressure vessel. This is the IS code 2825, the introductory page. So you can download this. If you just Google it, you can get it from BIS. It is available for free download. You have to download that. Then it is a container for fluids that are under pressure. That is a simple definition of an unfired pressure vessel. You have to simply hold it. It is simply a container which can hold a fluid under pressure. And very simple example of a pressure vessel is the LPG cylinder at your home. All of you will be having an LPG cylinder at your home, and inside that you have liquefied petroleum gas. So it is under high pressure. You are liquefying the gas, and it is in that container. So that is a very simple example of what a pressure vessel is. So there will be many aspects to consider in the design of that. And you know, even a simple LPG vessel is highly complicated. It can cause big explosions and all. So we must be very precise while designing such aspects. Then it is widely used in process industries, petroleum refineries. Like those who have been went for internships, you must have seen many pressure vessels in refineries, etc. Then the vessels, it can be either horizontal or vertical. So horizontal pressure vessels are called as vessels, and vertical you call it as a column. Today we'll be discussing more about columns. So this is an example of a horizontal pressure vessel. So it is in the horizontal direction, and this is an example of a vertical pressure column. So here the arrangement is in a vertical manner. So the use is clear. In vertical columns, of course, the advantage is that you can save a lot of space as compared to the horizontal one. Then the major components of a pressure vessel are its shell, head, then nozzles and flanges, and finally support. We'll be dealing each section. So the elements which you have to consider. First one is you have to determine what is the thickness of the shell required. Then you have to do the stress calculation. Is the thickness which we have designed is it suitable for our duty? Then finally the thickness and type of head and closure. So any shell must have a opening as well as a closure. So there we have to design that. Then finally support. So support for any vessel, any vertical vessel or horizontal vessel, it must be on support. So we have to design that. Finally, openings nozzle. So even the LPG cylinder, it has a nozzle from which you have to draw the outlet. So all pressure vessels will have a nozzle or an opening from which you have to either input the liquid under pressure or extract the liquid under pressure. Okay, so we will be dealing with today the thickness of shells and stress calculation. So this is a simple schematic of a pressure vessel. So all the all the different elements are shown here in detail. So this part is the head of the pressure vessel. Then the shell, the total body which we see is the shell. The nozzles, all these things are nozzles. So it is any opening in the shell or the head of a pressure vessel can be termed as a nozzle. Then the support legs in order to hold the vessel in place, then maybe to support from vibrations, earthquakes, or say wind effect, etc. You require supports. So this is the general schematic. Then moving forward, shell, it is the primary component that contains the pressure. So in order to withstand the pressure, you require a component, and that main component or the primary component is the shell. Then the shell, it may be a single piece or it can be multiple pieces welded together. But the thing is, it must have a common rotational axis, or there must be a common axis for the shell. The welding should be perfect so that the axis of rotation is common. Then it can be cylindrical, spherical, or conical in shape. So cylindrical vessels are most commonly used. Spherical vessels, they can withstand extremely high pressure. So it is used for storing high pressure gases. Conical shapes, we don't use it much, but it can also be used. Then all this is enclosed in IS 2825. You can check that. Then heads or closures, all the shells must be closed at the ends. There must be the top as well as the bottom. It must be closed. So that is called as a head or a closure. Then heads, we prefer curved heads rather than flat heads. Then curved configurations are stronger and allow the heads to be thinner, lighter, and less expensive. So flat heads, even though they may be cheaper, but they cannot withstand extremely high pressures. So we usually use these types of heads. A flat is very minimalistic use. Then you have a toruspherical head, then elliptical head, conical head, and hemispherical. So all the schematics of these are available in the IS code. You can refer that if you need that. Then supports, so adequate for the applied weight. So the vessel itself will be having weight. So in order to support the weight of a vessel, you require supports, and to withstand the wind loads or the earthquake loads, etc., you require a support. Then design pressure is not important for choosing the support. Yeah, and support, if you consider it, it is an external entity, something which is outside the pressure vessel. So whatever is the pressure inside the vessel is not applicable to the support. That is why design pressure is not important while choosing the support. But the temperature is a consideration because there is point of contact between the outside of a shell and the support. So there may be thermal expansion effects, etc. So that must be considered. So these are the types which you have to study: skirt support, bracket support, and a cradle support. So this is again, it is available in IS 2825. So these are the three different types. The first one is a cradle support. Cradle support or a saddle support. It is used for horizontal vessels. And for vertical columns, you have the lug support, the lug or the bracket support. So you can see their legs are there and bolted to the bottom. And finally, this one is called as a skirt support. So this is the skirt support. So that are the three types which we are interested in. Then nozzles and flanges. So all the cylindrical components that penetrate the shell or a head of a pressure vessel is called as a nozzle. So as I mentioned, any opening in the shell or the head is called as a nozzle. And nozzle, it must be connected to some other pipeline. So the connection between a nozzle and another pipeline is called as a flange. In order to facilitate the connection, we use a flange in between. And again, the design is available in IS 2825. So this is an example of a flange. So you have one pipeline here and another pipeline here, and both are connected using this region. So this region is called as a flange. So this is an expanded view. So one pipeline will be coming from here, one will be from here. So this region in between is called as a flange, and this lining in between it, sometimes it is called as a gasket. So since both these are metallic parts, they can undergo thermal expansion or thermal contraction. So in order to avoid leakage, we use different kinds of sealing materials, and the sealing material is called as a gasket. Okay, then moving on to the design of tall vessels. First of all, the need. Why should we design a tall vessel? What is the requirement? So that is explained with the help of this diagram. So if you have a very large vessel or a very tall vessel, it must be supported on either sides by support rings or guide ropes. So these are called as guide ropes. So what is the disadvantage of that? Lot of space is covered. As the length increases, you have to provide multiple areas of support. So what is happening is the space occupied by such a very tall vessel is very large. So for a chemical industry, it is not very useful to utilize much space. So what we have to do is we have to design vessels which can stand on its own, or they are called as self-supported vessels. Okay, so that is the idea, or that is the need for design of a tall vessel. Vessels which can support itself without the help of guide ropes or guide. These are guide ropes, so they can save more area, or you can pack much things into a chemical industry. So that is the advantage, or that is the need of a design of tall vessel. Then to proceed with the design, there are certain terminologies which you require to know. So these are explained in detail in IS 2825. So I'll be just explaining that. First term is called as the design pressure. So there are two terms. One is the design pressure and the operating pressure. So what design pressure means? The pressure which is used in the calculation for determining the minimum thickness. So in order to determine the thickness of a shell, what is the pressure which we are using? That is called as the design pressure, and it is usually obtained by adding a minimum of 5% to the working pressure. So two pressure terms, one is the design pressure and one is the working gauge pressure. Working pressure is the pressure at which the equipment is going to work. Design pressure is the pressure at which we are going to design the equipment. So always design pressure will be greater than the working pressure, and if you substitute and solve it, you will be getting the design pressure P is 1.05 into the working or operating gauge pressure. And it's important to note the pressure under consideration is gauge pressure, not the absolute pressure. The second thing, design temperature. The same way, the temperature which is used in the calculation of minimum thickness is the design temperature. So T design is T operating or working plus 25 degrees Celsius. This all this 5%, 25 is as per the IS code. You can vary it. The supplier or the person who is designing and the person who wants the design, they can agree between each other and increase it, but you cannot decrease it. So this is the minimum which must be there for a successful design. Then the next factor is called as the weld joint efficiency factor. So as I mentioned, the shell can be either a single piece of metal or it can be multiple pieces joined together. So in order to join metal pieces together, the efficient way is welding. So the efficiency of welding is also important while we consider the design. So the weld efficiency factor capital J is the strength of the welded joint divided by the strength of the plate welded. So this is it is a ratio, so it is not having any units, and there are certain specific values which is available in the IS code 2825. So this table is extracted from the IS code. So there are three classes of vessel: class 1, class 2, and class 3. For class 1 vessels, it is used for handling toxic and lethal materials at temperatures less than 20 degrees Celsius. So there you cannot take any chance. The welding must be of the same strength as that of the plate welded. So the J factor must be 1. Then the next class is class 3 for light duties up to 250 degrees Celsius and unfired. So this is the class which we are concerned, which we will be designing more. So here it can have values 0.7, 0.6 or 0.5. So it can be fixed how to fix this is available in the IS code. You can refer that. Then which is not covered under 1 and 3 is covered under class 2. So it is having the value 0.85. So design pressure, temperature, and weld efficiency factor. Then the next term is the allowable stress small f. So it is the maximum stress that a material can withstand at a particular temperature range. So it is also called as the rupture stress. So above this stress or above that pressure, the material will rupture. That is the idea. So whatever is the design, you have to keep it under that F value. And it is also available in Appendix A of IS 2825. So this is the Appendix A from IS 2825. So these are the different materials. Yes, this is for carbon and low alloy steel. Most designs which we are going to do will be based on this carbon or alloy. So here up the different temperature ranges are given. So based on the material, you can choose what is the value of F, and the unit is kilogram force per meter square. And if you check, it is written there at design temperature. So you have to convert the working temperature to the design temperature. Then next is the corrosion allowance. So corrosion, as you all will be familiar, any process equipment is prone to corrosion. It may be because of the high pressure, extremely high conditions it is withstanding, or maybe due to the material it is handling, etc. So we have to account for the corrosion also while we finalize the thickness. So whatever thickness value you are getting, we will be adding 1.5 millimeter extra to it in order to account for a corrosion. Okay. So this 1.5 mm is set by IS code. You can increase it but cannot decrease it. So whatever thickness value you will get, you have to add 1.5 to that to get the mentioned or to get the allowable thickness. Then the next is the standard nominal plate thickness. So if you are calculating the thickness, you will be getting many numerical values, say 1.2, 10.5, 11.6, etc. But the plates which are manufactured is of certain specific thickness. In India, we have only plates of certain specific thickness. So whatever thickness you are getting, it must be rounded to the next higher standard thickness. So that is available in IS code 1730. So this is the table. So you have these are the sets of standard thickness which is available. So say suppose you are getting a value 11.5. So next higher value is 12. So you will round off that to the 12. Okay, so that is the need of standard nominal plate thickness. Only the plates manufactured in India, it will be under these size ranges only. Okay, that is why we are estimating it to the next standard nominal thickness. Then stress analysis for tall vertical vessels. So there are two types of stress which any vertical vessel will be having. One is the stress due to the internal pressure. So inside I mentioned a pressure vessel. So whatever fluid is it containing, it will be under pressure. So that fluid will exert a pressure on the walls of the vessel. That is called as the stress due to internal pressure. And it is either tensile, it can be either tensile or compressive in nature. Tensile is elongating force. If you are pulling something by the ends, then the resulting stress is the tensile stress, and the opposite. When you are pushing something or compressing something, you will be having the compressive stress. The second one is only due to the compressive action. So in the first case, stress due to internal pressure, it can be either the circumferential stress, radial stress, or axial stress. So all these are the kinds of internal pressure which a vessel can have. Circumferential stress acting along the circumference of the vessel, radial stress along the radial direction, axial stress along the axis of rotation. So that these are the different kinds of pressure. Then in compressive, you have dead load. So dead load include the weight of the shell, insulation, heads, attachments, and the contents. The vessel will be having something inside, so that is called as the content. So all these things contribute to the dead load, and this dead load, it will have a compressive action on the vessel. The second one is the live load, so which includes the furnishing. So whatever equipment you design will be housed in a building or a structure. So what is the weight of that structure, etc., is the live load. Then the people, the plant officers which are inspecting that, and other equipment which are required. That is the live load. And for our design, we don't consider live load, we just consider dead load. Then we have the wind load. So wind load, it is causing a bending moment, or you can call it as a cantilever effect. So cantilever, it is you can consider it as a road which is fixed at one end, and one end is free for deflection. So if you are deflecting one of the ends, it can move in either one of the direction. So the same way is a very tall vessel. It is fixed at the bottom, and the top end is free to move. So it is equivalent to a cantilever beam. So when wind is blowing, so the wind can sway the tall vessel in the direction of wind. So that is called as a wind load. Then you have eccentric and irregular load. So it is due to the torque of pipe, platform, ladder, etc. So if you have observed a tall vessel, it will always have some associated piping with it or some ladders. So if the personnel have to climb to the top and verify everything is okay, there must be ladders provided. So these things will add an extra weight. They are called as the eccentric weights. Then finally is the seismic forces. So in India, we have earthquakes, but some may be very high in the Richter scale, some may be low. But whatever is the scale, we have to account for the seismic forces, so which accounts for vibration. So this is the typical picture of a tall vessel. So as I mentioned, this is a ladder. So it is an eccentric. So apart from the basic structure of the tall vessel, there are ladders, then platforms, etc. in between. So these are openings for pipelines. So pipelines may be there in between. So all these are called as the eccentric loads.
Sir,
Yes.
20 minutes over. Shall we proceed with the Q&A session?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Sir, the students have raised a few questions. The first one is, even though many simulation softwares are available, what is the relevance of studying the course analytically?
Okay, yeah, that is what I mentioned in the beginning. Nowadays, all designs are done using simulation softwares only. But in order to program something or code something into a simulation software, you require a basic data or require some basic equation. And all such equations are proved or are derived analytically. So only if you have a good idea about the analytical equations, you can model that in a software. So that is the relevance of this course. So if you know all the analytical equations thoroughly, you can easily scale up. You can easily model it in a simulation software to get the output. That is the relevance of the analytical course. Yes. Any other question?
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next question. Which one is more useful, BFD, PFD, or C&ID?
Okay, regarding the diagrams. So BFD, the block flow diagram, that in terms of understandability, BFD is the most simplest one. Any person, any layman can understand that. But as you proceed to the next one, PFD and P&ID, you require certain level of expertise. So in terms of the data presented, P&ID is the most useful one. In terms of understandability, BFD, block flow diagram, is the most useful one. Okay, any other question?
Thank you, sir. Next question. What is a gasket?
Gasket. So that I have mentioned in a flange. So there are two parts for a flange. One is the in between both the parts, we put a lining in between. So since both are metal parts, as the temperature increases, it can expand or it may contract. So it can lead to leakages in the pipeline. So to avoid those leakages, we use an extra piece in between the flanges. It is called as a gasket, in order to account for this thermal expansion or contraction. It is usually made of asbestos or materials having very high thermal conductivity, so that there won't be any changes in their shape. But they may have to be replaced because of corrosion. Okay. Any other question?
Thank you, sir. The last one is photostats of Perry's handbook allowed in exam hall?
Photostats of Perry. Photostats of Perry actually is not allowed. You need to have a original copy, either the 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th edition. You must be having any one version with you. But if you're having the 7th edition, some data may not be there in that. In that case, whatever data is not available can be taken as a Xerox and carried to the examination hall. But you cannot carry the entire Perry's Chemical Engineering Handbook as a Xerox copy with you. You have to possess an original copy. Then extra some data is required that can be Xeroxed from the higher versions of Perry. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. As of now, the questions is over. You can proceed to the next part of lecture. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the next topic, that is the design intent, or what we are trying to implement by our design. So the first thing which is important is the design data for a tall vessel will be provided to you. So what all are the weights, etc. What is the wind load, what is the seismic factor, etc. Everything will be provided to you. You have to perform a stress analysis to verify whether the design is feasible or not, or whether the height is sufficient or the thickness of the plate is sufficient, etc. We have to analyze the stresses and find a conclusion. That is the intent. Then we are interested in the thickness of the shell material, whether the provided thickness as per IS code is satisfactory or not, is what we are trying to design. So it's a general statement. The bottom part of the shell will be under more stress as compared to the top region due to the cantilever effect. So as I mentioned, any tall vessel, any tall column is a cantilever. It is fixed at the bottom, and as you go to the top, it is free to move. So there are more stresses at the bottom of a tall column as compared to the top. So you can assume really that the bottom part should be more thicker than the top part. That is why there is a variation in thickness as you proceed from the bottom to the top of a column. That is what we have to analyze with the help of stresses. The thickness at the top and bottom region must be varied to accommodate the stress variation. So in order to do that, what we do is we divide the total height of the column into two regions. One is called as the upwind side region, and another is called as the downwind side region at a particular height x. And regarding the height x, certain Indian textbooks, they follow a convention of 20 meter. Okay, so what is the idea is, till a height of about 20 meter, the wind velocity is a constant. Okay, and above 20 meters, the velocity of wind will change. So the x point is usually taken as 20 meter from the bottom of a column. But for our design, we are not following that because it is not recommended in the IS codes. So I'm just mentioning this point because you'll be seeing this in many textbooks. So this 20 meter, you can use that, no issues. But our design is based on the IS code, so it is stating this factor, the upwind side and the downwind side, considering the wind pressure to be constant. We are assuming uniform wind velocity. So this is the schematic of what we'll be going to design. So this is our column under consideration. The total height is capital H from the top of the column till the ground, or till where the support is stopping. That I'm calling as capital H, or the total height. And this is the skirt height, or this is the height of the support. Then this is the X I mentioned. So X is measured from the top of the column. So from the top of the column till a particular location, somewhere in between, it need not be the center. It can be below the center or above the center. This is just representation. So from the top of the column to any point in the column, I'm calling that height, or that height till that part as X, and I'm calling that as the upwind side. And whatever is below that, I'm calling it as the downwind side. So we'll be performing stress analysis on the upwind side as well as on the downwind side. Okay, the first thing is stress due to internal pressure. And one more thing, I'll be dealing it from an exam point of view, so I won't be going into the derivation of the equations that I'm using. If you're interested in the derivations, you can refer internet or the NPTEL lecture videos that I mentioned, or in Joshi and Mahajan or Bhattacharya, the definitions, the relevant derivations are there, but from exam point of view, it is not required. So I'll be mentioning just the equations. So sigma, the stress is force by area. So all equations will be in that form. So the units will be in kilogram force per millimeter square. So the first one, and the notation of stress is sigma. So sigma A. So AP, I am assuming the axial pressure along. So as I mentioned, internal pressure of three components: circumferential, axial, and radial. So since the vessel is a vertical column, we are assuming that axial pressure is only the important or the relevant one, and axial pressure sigma AP is P di divided by 4T, and the term sigma AP is the axial stress, force per unit area, P is the design pressure, di internal diameter of the shell, T is the thickness. Okay, and to determine T, we have to use the IS code 2825. So as per the IS code, this equation is there in equation 3.1 in page 13 of IS 2825. P di divided by 200 Fj minus P. So F is the allowable stress that I have already explained in the terminology, the maximum stress which the material can withstand at a particular temperature. It is available in Appendix 2825. Then J is the weld efficiency factor, so that is also available in the IS code. Then P is the design pressure. So when you substitute it, you will be getting the values. Then the next part is due to the dead weight or the compressive forces we are analyzing. And dead weight, as I mentioned, there are weight of the shell, insulation, attachments, etc. So these all are considered under the dead weight of the shell. So first thing is due to the weight of the shell. The shell itself will have a weight because of the material of construction. So sigma is weight of the shell divided by cross-sectional area of the shell. So sigma, as I mentioned, is stress is simply force divided by area. Weight here, it means the force applied in kilogram force per the unit cross-sectional area. So weight is density into cross-sectional area into height or the thickness, rho into V. So sigma shell, you will be getting pi by 4 do square minus di square. When you substitute the terms, you will be getting sigma shell is rho shell, the density of the shell material into x. X is the height which I mentioned from the top of the column till the point where we are considering at the upwind side. That height is x. That is sigma shell is rho shell into x. Then next is the due to insulation. So all pressure vessels, there might be temperature changes inside. So in order to limit the temperature change, we have to use insulation. So that insulation will have an added weight. So that is sigma insulation is weight of insulation into cross-sectional area of insulation, the same thing. So when you substitute everything, you'll be getting sigma insulation is D insulation into T insulation into rho insulation into capital X. X is the height till the upwind side, dm into T. Now, what is dm and what is T insulation? So dm is the average diameter of the vessel, outside dia plus inside dia by 2. Then D insulation is the outside diameter plus 2 times the insulation thickness. So that you can simply understand, if you cut open a cylinder, so there will be 2 thicknesses on either side. So that is by the 2 into the T insulation, and DO, because we are adding insulation on the outer surface of the vessel, that is why we are considering DO here, the outside diameter. Then the next one is due to liquid and trace. So any pressure vessel, it will have a liquid inside which will be under pressure. And if it is it can be a distillation column, it may be an absorption column, it may be a stripping column, whatever it is, there may be some content inside. Some columns are packed columns, some may be tray columns. So if it is a tray column, what is the procedure is described here. So sigma of the liquid, stress due to the liquid inside is weight of the liquid divided by pi dm into T, and weight of the liquid is number of tray into weight of the liquid per tray into pi di square by 4, the cross-sectional area. Then number of trays, this is a specific case I'm discussing. X is the height till which we are considering minus the top space. Top space meaning the when we consider the total height of a vessel, capital H, the height of the head is also included in that. Okay, so we don't usually keep trays in the head till a particular height only we keep the trays. That is why that top space is subtracted here, divided by tray spacing. Tray spacing, the distance between the vertical distance between trays is called as the tray spacing plus 1. Then next is due to attachments, internal fittings, top heads, platform, ladders, etc. I have showed one image where you have seen the ladder, platform, etc. So weight of all attachments divided by the cross-sectional area pi dm into T. That is sigma ATT, meaning attachments. Now the total stress due to dead weight is the sum of all this, sigma shell plus sigma insulation, sigma liquid plus sigma ATT. So whatever is the sum of the dead weight, it is added up. Then next part is due to the wind. So wind, the stress due to wind can be either tensile and compressive. That is why I've written T and C. It can either cause a compressive stress or it can be a tensile one. So wind design, the stress is bending moment divided by section modulus, MW divided by Z. A section modulus you must have studied in engineering mechanics. You can what is the net area in which the stress is acting is given by the section modulus. Then for cylindrical vessels, this is the equation. We'll be designing only cylindrical pressure vessels. So you can simply note down this equation. Set is I. I is the moment of inertia divided by Y max. The equation for I, the equation for Y max, dm divided by 2. So you can derive this, but we don't need that. So you can simply note down the equations. Then if you substitute everything, you'll be getting set is equal to pi d square m into t divided by 4. Then mw, the bending moment, is wind load into x divided by 2. So wind load is the load which the wind exerts on the pressure vessel. So this is defined by k1 k2 pw into x into d naught. So all this data, it is available in another IS code which we are not using. It is used by civil engineering students, so we cannot use that. So K1, it is a constant which depends on the shape factor. It is 1.4 for plates and 0.7 for cylindrical surfaces. So for we are using cylindrical surface, so the value will be 0.7. Then the next one, K2, it is the wind coefficient which depends on the period of vibration. So the motion of wind can cause a very small vibration for the pressure vessel. So that is being notated with capital T. So K2 will have the value 1 if the period is less than 0.5, and it will have a value of 2 if it is greater than 0.5. Then time period is given by this equation 2 pi by 3 WH. The terms in this equation are explained. H is the total height including support. E is the modulus of elasticity, and that is usually a constant for a material. So for our case, it is steel. We are taking it as 2 into 10 raised to 10. W is the total weight, I is the moment of inertia, G acceleration due to gravity, and PW is the wind pressure. So this is what I mentioned. Here I am taking PW as a constant. Either it will be given in the question, or you can assume it to be a constant, 125 kilogram force per meter square. Then the next is the seismic load. Due to the vibration of the earth, it can cause another vibration. So again, it is being modeled already. So you can simply use the model equations. So here CS is the seismic factor, weight, then X, H is the total height, dm is the total diameter, Z is the section modulus, etc. So you can substitute all the values in this equation. And in all this equation, the height X is an unknown, and we have to solve for X. That is our intent. Okay, we have to find till what height is the thickness valid, and after what height we have to increase the thickness. So we have to find that X. CS is the seismic coefficient. You can take that as 0.8 if it is not mentioned. So all these values which I am giving, 0.8 for seismic factor, PW, the wind pressure, that is for India. In India, we have certain standard values which can be used for design. That is why I am giving these values. Then eccentric load, I mentioned there may be some eccentric loads like pipelines or ladders, platforms, etc. So due to the eccentric load, the moment is given by this equation, sigma me divided by z. Me is the moment due to eccentric loads. W1 is the weight of the eccentric load. E1 is called as the eccentricity factor. So that also should be given. So W1, E1 plus W2, E2, etc. till whatever is the given. So now we have all these stresses, the compressive as well as tensile stresses, everything we have. Now we have to equate these stresses and solve for X. That is our objective. And we are equating these stresses for the upwind side as well as the downwind side separately. Now in the upwind side, we assume all stresses to be tensile, or it leads in elongation of the vessel. Okay. So the sigma max tensile, the maximum tensile strength is sigma wind or sigma seismic, whichever is larger at capital H. So either one can be used, plus sigma AP minus sigma AP is the axial pressure, D is due to the dead weight. Now what we do is, for finding sigma wind and sigma seismic, we substitute the capital X as the H value and find out at H which is the largest sigma, and we use that sigma here. Okay, so substitute X as H, then and this LHS, sigma max tensile, as per IS code, it should be greater than or equal to Fj. F is the tensile, the maximum stress allowable, and J is the weld efficiency factor. So LHS is known. RHS, you have one variable X, you can solve for X. Similar way, we can equate all the downwind side components. So there, towards the bottom of the column, we assume the compressive stresses are in action. More of the compressive elements are there. There we are comparing the sigma wind or whichever is larger plus the dead weight, because dead weight gives more importance to compression, or all the compressive process are involved in the dead weight stress. That is why here it is added. If you check here, it is subtracted. The dead weight is subtracted because the dead weight is in the opposite direction of elongation. If elongation is happening in positive direction, dead weight will act in the negative direction. That is why here it is subtracted and here we are adding it. So that is the only difference. The rest all is same, plus sigma d due to dead weight minus sigma ap. Rest all components are same. So then you have to solve this. And here the sigma max compression is given by 0.125 E T by D naught. E is the modulus of elasticity, T is the thickness, D0 is the outside diameter. Or if you can use it as sigma max is 1/3 of the yield strength. So that you have to refer the question paper. If it is mentioned the maximum compressive strength is 1/3 of the yield stress, then you can use this equation. And for yield stress, you can refer appendix A of IS 2825. Then again substitute all values and solve for x. Okay. Now what to do with the solved value, I will be discussing in a problem. So this is a typical problem which will be given to you. Mechanical design, a lot of data will be given to you for the shunt side, internal diameter, working pressure, temperature, height, top chamber, bottom chamber, what is the material, insulation thickness, etc. Again, this is the continuation. What is the head, etc. So a lot of data will be given to you, but some data you may not need. Some data will be required. So you have to identify what is the required data and use that. So to proceed to the design, the first step is estimating the design parameters. You have to estimate all the design parameters. So P working was given to you. So from P working, we are finding P design, which is 1.05 times the working pressure. Then T working is also given 180. So T operating. So you have to find what is the design pressure and design temperature. That is the first step. Then after that, thickness of the shell as per IS code. So this is the equation. So from the IS code, you have to take the F value. So our design temperature was 205 degrees Celsius. So for 20 and the material given was 2002 2B, class 2B steel. So for class 2B steel, the value is 12.1 kilogram force per millimeter square up to 250 degrees Celsius. So our value is 12.1. So 12.1 is taken, then substituted. So you'll be getting the thickness 24.94. So as I mentioned, the thickness must be estimated to the nominal thickness. So from this table, next to 24, you'll be having a value 25. That will be taken. So 25. This is used for all stress calculation. For all the stress calculation, we will use this thickness. But for design calculation, you have to add the corrosion allowance also plus 2 mm. So you'll be getting 26 and that is converted to the next standard height 28. Then the next is stress due to internal pressure from the equation PdA by 4T substituted. You'll be getting the values. So all this data are given to you. So simply substitution is there. Then next is due to the dead weight of the vessel. So here rho shell into X. Rho of the shell is given. That was in meter. I'm converting it into millimeter. That is why the multiplication factor is there. And that is important. In all the equations, we are using kilogram force per millimeter square. So all conversions must be to millimeter square. So take care with the conversions. Then stress due to dead weight and insulation. So outside diameter, you are estimating. Outside diameter may or may not be given. If it is not given, inside diameter plus 2 times the thickness. Again, is cut open a cylinder and just identify what is di and 2t. So outside diameter is estimated, average diameter, then insulation thickness, then sigma insulation is estimated. It is having a variable x. Okay. Then next is stress due to the liquid. The equations I have mentioned. So all the data are given to you. So if you substitute, you will be getting an equation in terms of x here again, the last equation. Then similarly for attachments, so weight of attachments. So for all the attachments, you will be getting an equation. And considering the attachments, sometimes the weight of attachments will be given as a whole. All attachment weight together constitutes so and so. Else it will be given platform weight will be so and so. Head weight will be so and so. So you have to add whatever. And in our question, you were given the head weight. That is why I'm taking this plus 280 term.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Shall we move on to Q&A because we have only 10 more minutes?
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a few more questions. The first is, what is the need for nominal plate thickness?
What is the need for?
Nominal plate thickness.
Nominal plate thickness. So that I mentioned, in India, we produce only plates of certain thicknesses, 5 millimeter, 6 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 12, etc. So in order to have a uniformity among all the manufacturers, that code is fixed. That is why we are having a nominal thickness. Yes, next question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Why is the negative value of X neglected?
Negative value of X is neglected because I mentioned X is taken from the top of the column. So from the top towards the bottom, we are measuring X. So the sign is not significant there. Plus one more thing, X is the length or position. So it cannot be negative. That is why we are not taking the negative.
Okay, thank you, sir. What if X is greater than greater than the total height of the tower?
If X is greater than the total height, meaning there is some issue with the calculation, you have to recalculate it assuming another standard thickness. So the thickness which you have got is not satisfactory. That is why you are getting an X value greater than H. So you have to recalculate the entire thing taking another thickness.
Okay, thank you, sir. The last question is, many assumptions are taken in the design procedure, like wind pressure, seismic factors, etc. So, won't the final answer vary from student?
Yeah, yes, the final answer will vary from student to student, and so the assumptions which we are taking are standard. So you can take any assumption which is justifiable. Okay. So in India, as I mentioned, seismic factor is 0.8 is true. This 125 can be taken. So depending on parameter which we are taking, there must be a standard value. And yes, the answer will vary from individual to individual. So the marking also will vary. We'll check the basic rate. If all the values are substituted properly, then marks will be awarded.
Okay, sir, thank you. If the stress is given directly, should we recalculate it again?
No need, no need. If any here itself, if you are given directly, the dead weight is directly given, then no need to estimate all this. You can directly use the value of sigma. No need to estimate it again. So the all the stresses are estimated. Then finally, we are estimating the wind load. The procedure I have mentioned already. Then final thing. So this is the equating part. So where we equate all the stresses which we are calculated, and we are solving for X. So here I am getting a value for the upwind side as 129.21. Similarly, if I am doing an equation for the downwind side, I am getting an X value of 31.9. So as I mentioned earlier, we are not taking the negative value as it is a length, and also it is measured from the top of the column towards the bottom. Now, what is the conclusion from? And we have two values, 129 and XS 31.9. So what value to proceed with? So that is in the conclusion part. We have to take the smallest value of the X obtained. So yeah, so for that, the actual height of the tower, I mentioned it is the total height minus the height of the support. So the support height was already given in the question as 4.9. So the height is 39.1. Then, so what is the conclusion is still a height of 31.9 meter from the top of the vessel, the thickness of 28 mm is valid. So the thickness which we got was 28 millimeter. So till the upwind side or till that capital X, the thickness which you got is applicable, that is 28 mm, and for the remaining 7.2 millimeter the thickness must be more, or you have to add an extra thickness. So that is the conclusion from our analysis. So we got an X value of 31.9. The total tower height is 39.1. So till the height of 39.9, 31.9 from the top, the thickness of 28 millimeter is valid, and after that you have to increase the thickness. So that is the conclusion from our design. And as I mentioned, if you are getting X greater than the total height, meaning you have to recalculate the entire with another standard thickness value. Okay. So that is the session. Again, you have to practice the calculation multiple times. Then only you can know what terms to take at which location, etc. Then, as I mentioned, some assumptions need to be taken at some points, like seismic factor, the total wind load, etc. So that if whatever assumption you are taking, make sure it is justifiable. So if you are taking a value, why have you taken that value? Or if you are assuming something to be constant, why you are mentioning that as a constant? So whatever is that, it must be mentioned.